Welcome friends. Today we are presenting an interesting sci-fi story of your life. So let's about story. Story of your life is narrated by Dr. Louise Banks. On the night her daughter is convinced. Throughout the story, she narrates the events of her daughter's future life and recounts the arrival of a breed of aliens referred to as heptapods on Earth. At the beginning of the story, she is approached by a government official, Colonel Weaver, and a physicist, Dr. Gary Donnelly. Colonel Weaver assigns Dr. Banks and Dr. Donnelly to a looking glass, one of the communication devices that heptapods have placed at 112 different locations on Earth. Dr. Banks is assigned the task of learning about their language, while Dr. Donnelly is tasked with learning about their physics and mathematics. Dr. Banks began by recording spoken heptapods words including heptapod, chair and yes. She used audio recording because she cannot make heptapod sounds herself due to the fact that heptapods and humans do not have the same vocal tracts. She then moves on to studying heptapods writing, which she hopes will speed up her learning process. She began to compile heptapod words, both spoken and written versions of the same word. The heptapod use a logographic script, which means that they are not phonetically written. Dr. Banks and Dr. Donnelly nicknamed the two heptapods they communicate with Flapper and Raspberry. Dr. Banks discovers that their written and spoken language are unrelated when she moves on to learning about heptapod verbs in the spectrographs of the spoken language. Dr. Banks can differentiate the subject from the verb. However, in the written language, they are portrayed as a single logogram. Dr. Banks subsequently realizes that the heptapod script is not separated into words. Instead, the words are brought together into a single image. Eventually, Dr. Banks realized that the logograms should instead be called semagrams because they are irreducible to spoken words. She demonstrates what this means to Dr. Donnelly by drawing a circle with a line through it on a board. This sign means not allowed, but it doesn't correspond to any actual spoken words. She realizes that the heptapod written and spoken language are completely different languages and decides to refer to them as heptapods A spoken and heptapod B written. The linguists decode the grammar of heptapod A. They discover that heptapod speech contains free word order and center embedding of clauses. Both of these features can be found in human languages. They also learn that the way in which semagrams are written, orientation or rotation, changes their meaning. Additionally, every single line that makes up the semagram must be read together with the rest of the semagram. Dr. Banks learns to write in heptapod B, but she is not yet fluent. As Dr. Banks makes advances in heptapod linguistics, the physicists are having less luck. Eventually, however, there is a breakthrough. The heptapod understand Fermat's principle of least time. This principle states that a ray of light will take the fastest possible route to its destination. This requires for the ray to have an understanding of what the fastest possible route is. Meanwhile, Dr. Banks asks to watch Flapper and Raspberry write semagrams in order to determine if there is a preferred word order in writing. She discovers that when writing a semagram, they start with a single line that is integral to several different clauses in the sentence. These clauses Dr. Banks to infer that the heptapod had to know how the entire sentence would be laid out before it could write the very first stroke. Later, Dr. Donnelly tells Dr. Banks that the heptapods don't see the universe as humans do. Humans have a casual interpretation of the universe, in which everything is part of a never-ending chain of cause and effect. In contrast, heptapods have a teleological view, in which they seem to know everything that happened and will happen at the same time. As Dr. Banks becomes fluent in heptapod B, she notices that it changes the way that she thinks. She wonders if the future is known, then if free will exists. In order for free will to truly exist, then someone cannot know what will happen in their future. However, Dr. Banks wonders, what if the experience of knowing the future changed a person? What if it evokes a sense of urgency, a sense of obligation to act precisely as she knew she would? Dr. Banks buys a wooden bowl because she knows it will fall on her daughter's head in the future. This causes her to believe that free will still does exist to an extent. As she buys the bowl, the motion didn't feel like something I was forced to do. Instead, it seemed just as urgent as my rushing to catch the bowl right in following. She realizes that the heptapods neither have true free will nor are they completely bound to the future. Instead, their motives for acting simply coincide with the path of history. She reveals that now that she knows the future, would never act contrary to the future. Even though she knows her daughter will die when she is 25 years old. In the end, the heptapods leave after a gift exchange without any real explanation. Dr. Banks is there when they leave, and she knows what she will say because she can now see the future. The story closes in the present, where it is revealed that Banks' daughter's father is Dr. Donnelly. He asks her if she wants to make a baby. That's it. Thank you.